How's it going? Kevin Cleary here with The View from the Pew. And I want to ask you a question today that's going to come along with a challenge. And the question is, are you blessed? Are you blessed? Stop and ask yourself that question. Do you think of yourself as a blessed person? Do you think of yourself as, favored by God and finding favor with Him, living a life that includes all kinds of good things that come from God? Probably most of us do. And many of us, if we don't, when we stop and count our blessings, look at all the good, comfortable, favorable things that go on in our life, all of a sudden we go, yeah, I'm pretty fortunate. So take just a second right now and think of some of the things that you count as blessings. Yeah, there's quite a few, right? I try to regularly stop and think about that and to acknowledge God for the many good things that He's done for me in my life. But recently, I was challenged as I looked at Scripture again, and of course that's often what happens when we look at Scripture. And I wanted to share the passage that challenged me particularly on this point of understanding myself as a blessed person. In the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus has gathered a large crowd, or they've gathered around Him, and He's going to take the opportunity to teach them. And He begins teaching with these words. It says in Matthew chapter 5, beginning in verse 2, He opened His mouth and taught them, saying, Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are the poor in spirit? That wasn't on my list. Blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted. That wasn't on my list either. Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they shall be satisfied. What? This thinking is very different from what I kind of had in mind when I approached considering myself a blessed person. Blessed are the merciful, for they shall receive mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called sons of God. Blessed are those who are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are you when others revile you and persecute you and utter all kinds of evil against you falsely on my account. Rejoice and be glad, for your reward is great in heaven. For so they persecuted the prophets who were before you. When I read this passage, it really makes me stop and think about how I consider blessings. Whether or not I understand myself as a blessed person or not, and how I understand myself to be blessed. Notice that the only thing in here that's really done to you that you receive from outside, which normally is how we think of blessings, all stuff that we receive, right? The only thing on this list that we receive is when people revile you and persecute you for the sake of righteousness. Say all kinds of evil against you. Really? I want to challenge you to read this passage for yourself. Matthew 5, verses 2 through 12, and ask, are you blessed? Do you find your life and your situation on this list? I further want to challenge you to notice that in this list, almost every single one of these are matters of heart and mind, the way we think and the way we feel about the world. I want to challenge you one step further to realize that if you read this list of blessings, you can find any person anywhere. And what I mean by that is a person could have these attributes if they lived in the worst slum in India or in the most oppressive political regime, or under the most oppressive political regime, or in the biggest, fanciest mansion, on the coast of California. These kind of blessings are very different than what we often count as blessings. I do want to qualify this by saying we're told to thank God for the things that we have. We're told that every good thing comes from God. We're told that He created this world and everything in it. And so anything that we enjoy that is because we live in this world, we ought to be thankful to God for. There's no question about that. However, there's a very real question here about what it means to be blessed by God, favored by Him. The kind of character that we're developing and what we think of as Christian character. What we try to develop to make us better as Christians, I would suggest to you, should come from this list. You could have just a perfect knowledge of every aspect of Scripture. Granted, it would be very difficult to do without having a changed heart. But theoretically, you could memorize the Bible from cover to cover and never develop meekness. Never hunger and thirst for righteousness. Never become merciful or pure in heart or poor in spirit. As I said, it would be hard because the Bible has that capacity to touch our hearts and our lives. And I would suggest to you that Bible study is a great way to develop these characteristics. But theoretically, it's possible. You could give all your money that you've ever made and not be meek, not mourn, not be poor in spirit. And so I want to challenge you. When you think of yourself as a blessed person, which I suspect many of us do, that you ask, am I truly blessed? Am I truly favored by God? Do I possess those characteristics which Jesus says here God values? Am I taking steps in my life to develop those characteristics, to grow in them? And if I'm not, then what can I do differently tomorrow that I'm not doing today that will help me so that the next time I read this list of blessings, the next time I read this list of characteristics, I will find myself more accurately reflected there. And that's the view from the pew.